Hey folks, welcome back to Mainville ATV and Outdoors. Today we're going to be reviewing the 2024 Kubota RTV-X. This is the premium model. We have been putting this to use here on the property for the last 2 months or so, and I'm not going to lie, I think this is a contender for the best utility side-by-side on the market. Let me explain why. Okay, so first things first, obviously I'm going to upset some people, you know, Defender guys, Ranger guys, that kind of thing, when I say that this is probably the best utility side-by-side on the market. Here's the deal, when it comes to doing work, there is no better than this machine. You are not going to beat a diesel platform at what it does. This is designed to go out there and get the job done. I'm not saying that it's perfect. It has plenty of flaws. We're going to touch on that soon. But what we're going to do first is walk around the machine, tell you about its features, and kind of talk about where it fits in the lineup of all the models that Kubota has. Okay, so before we give you the full walk around tour, we're going to kind of describe what this is and where it fits in the whole scheme of all of their models. So Kubota has lots of different side-by-sides, all of them very utility, from the 520, the 850, and then into the diesel lineup they have the RTV-X Premium, which is what we have here. There's also a standard and basic package, and then there's the 1100C, which we've also had on the channel. We tried that on tracks in the winter, we've plowed with it, did a bunch of stuff. There's also the 1130, which is a 6-foot box, and the 1140, which is a convertible 4-seater, I believe. I haven't seen those last two myself, but basically that's what's going on. They have kind of a model for everything. This one is a correction of a lot of issues that they were having with the 1120 initially. The 1120 was a great platform, but there was definitely some problems, and this is kind of the answer to that. Okay guys, so we're starting out front. You're going to see a brand new hood design here. Style points, I suppose, looking cool. That's all right, nothing wrong with that. Ultimately, that's not going to change anything, but there it is. The headlights. The 1120 originally had a HID blue tint light thing. Not sure what the idea was there, but they updated to these LEDs. They're clean, they're bright, they're going to last forever, so it's hard to argue with that. The bumper is exactly the same, and it didn't need to change. How do I know that? Because I hit a bunch of trees, and the trees lost. Generic 3,500 pound winch on the front, and everything else is pretty much the same. When it comes to tire options, Kubota always has a slew of them. This is a brand new tire that they brought out for this particular model. It's kind of one of those examples that once you see it, this is going to be the tire of choice for everybody. A little more aggressive than the other options, although depending on your application, like if you're on a golf course, maybe you want like a soft turf tire, so I understand that. But if you're going to be pulling a moose out of the back or you're on a construction site, these are going to be it for you. So that's one of the new options. You're also going to see some aluminum wheel options, which I don't have. These are the standard steel rims, but you're going to see all sorts of different things. That's kind of the difference between the basic, standard, and premium packages, is kind of those add-ons. When it comes to the cab, basically nothing has changed to the other models that you've seen in the lineup. So you can get full cab doors, you name it, heat, sound system. The only thing that you can't get that the other models do have is air conditioning, is my understanding. I'm not exactly sure why that is. For this particular model, they got rid of the little half doors that were supposed to be here. And with that, they had to put a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. So I'm assuming there's some sort of regulation there that they had to meet. One of the things that I don't like is they removed the full seat belts for a lap belt. And I'm guessing there's something to do with speeds and regulation going on there. But when it comes to these belts, I don't know. They could have done a lot better. That's all I'm saying. So when it comes to the inside of the cab, everything's exactly as it was. Like I was saying, you're going to see your LCD screen, which is going to warn you for whatever may or may not be happening. Your shifter here, ignition, 12-volt power, glove box. You're going to see tilt steering, which is nice. You have your park brake, windshield wiper on this particular model, your horn and lights and everything else. They do have a little bit of seat adjustment, which is appreciated. The one thing that this machine tends to suffer in is throttle positioning. Luckily, this isn't a machine that's made for long distances, but I have taken this out on trails, and Kubota's famous for not doing a great job at positioning their throttle well. What happens is you feel like you have to hold your foot up. The diesels aren't nearly as bad as the sidekicks, but it's still something that I'd like to see changed, especially depending on seat adjustment. It just gets worse and worse. I'm only 5'9", so if you're 6 foot something, this is something that you're going to need to consider. Some of the other things you're going to see is plenty of storage underneath each seat. So if you need to carry some spare tools or whatever have you, you have the room to do so. There is a few flaws in this cab, but at the end of the day, the idea is that if I'm a a fella trying to get in here with my hunting gear, it is really easy to get into. It is really easy to get out of, which was a treat. When we were doing all the work here on my property with this machine, getting in and out of this was a breeze, and it was nice. It was never in my way. It was never inconvenient. This machine was perfect for that. So there are some pros to the cons, but I really wish that some of the little details were taken care of here. This lap belt, I mean, that could be improved. The position of the throttle, that's got to be an easy improvement for a company like Kubota. Otherwise, everything in here is perfect. Some of the last things that you're going to need to know is your four-wheel drive lever. There's your seat adjustment, your diff lock. Your winch plug is right here. When you buy one of these from the dealer, your winch remote's actually going to be in the glove box. Then you have your hydraulic dump box right there. So at the back here, this is what this particular model gets that's kind of special. The RTV-X Premium doesn't only get the bed liner tilt, hydraulic tilt, but it also gets a system called the Pro Connect. So traditionally before, if you've had like an 1100C or whatever have you, you could drop your tailgate like this and that would come down. But this one also turns into a flat deck like such. Obviously, you understand what that means. You can put things that are a little larger or awkward in the back of this that shouldn't have been there before. This has been really useful. So with my BX and forks, I could put, you know, whatever I wanted back here and move around the yard, things like that. This has been incredibly useful, and it's a pretty neat feature. The bed liner is exactly what you'd expect from a bed liner, so there's nothing new and revolutionary about that, but it is a nice product to have. The hydraulics in this are incredibly powerful. Ask me how I know. Whatever they're telling you that the rating is, I promise you it can do more, but that's just a secret between you and I. So we have a few things to talk about engine-wise, and I'm just gonna, well, I might as well show you how the tilt box works at the same time. Pretty nice. So ultimately, this is why I think this machine is the best utility machine on the market. At the end of the day, this is ultimately the reason why I believe that this is the best utility side-by-side on the market. That is a 3-cylinder Kubota diesel, something that they've been manufacturing since the dawn of diesels. Kubota is famous for their reliability. It's hard to match. And paired with that is the HST system, so you're not going to have a belt that'll fail on you. This will provide torque and power that you need all the time, no matter what. So it's hard to compare when you need to pull something out of the bush, whether it be a log or a moose or whatever you're up to. This is the power plant to do it. As great as hydrostat is, one of its downfalls is the pressures can build up, especially when you make a bunch of heat or if it sits out in the sun, that kind of thing. So one of the things that they were having trouble with was shifting, especially on inclines or declines. One of the updates with this particular model over the 1120 was they basically put what I'm going to call a bypass or a relief, which allowed some of that pressure to dissipate or go back to tank, so allowing you to shift better. This one shifts like an absolute dream. It's never given me trouble. It does need a bit of a linkage adjustment, but otherwise it's shifting way better than the predecessor was. I actually did a video with Huckabones at the dealership, and we tried this versus the 1120 on hills in a bunch of different scenarios, and I can tell you that this is 95% better. It's not perfect. It'll still have its moments. At the end of the day, if you catch it in just the right spot, it will have trouble shifting, but what you do is you just blip it a little bit on the throttle, and usually you can shift and carry on your way. So before we get into my personal opinion on this machine, I want you to remember what Kubota does best. That's equipment and implements. They're going to do a lot better at applying implements to this machine than a recreational company would. So if you need to put a big hydraulic V-blade on the front of this and you want to put a salt bin on the back or a broom, whatever have you, this machine's going to do it a lot better, especially with that diesel platform backing it up. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at a Kubota. Okay, so here's the actual review portion, my personal opinion. You're going to have a hard time beating this in the utility aspect. When it comes to recreational, this is easily beaten. I'm fully aware. So if you're going to compare this to a Defender or a Ranger or whatever have you, I understand that this machine has some flaws. Those are pretty obvious. When it comes to doing the job, however, you're going to have a very hard time beating this robust piece of equipment, because that's exactly what it is. It is more equipment than it is side-by-side. At the end of the day, it is side-by-side by appearance only. It is more like a small truck than anything else. And that's kind of apparent in the weight, but at the end of the day, it is a side-by-side. Some more pros is you're going to have an incredible dealer network. Kubota's everywhere. You could leave the country, go to another country. Kubota's going to be there. Wherever you are with this machine and whatever job you're doing, there isn't going to be a Kubota dealer very far. So parts are going to be very accessible. Service is going to be very accessible. That is a huge positive over some brands, like let's say a newcomer comes in. That's something you're going to have to struggle with. That is not the case with Kubota. The obvious is the diesel powertrain, another big pro. Is it going to win any races? Absolutely not, especially with some of the limitations that they impose on the machine, like speed limiters and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like I've said before, if you're going to pull something, if you're going to lift something, carry something, whatever you're going to do with this machine, the diesel powertrain is going to do a better job than a traditional gas powertrain. The next big pro is obviously that tilt and flat deck in the back. They call it the Pro Convert. Really hard to beat that. There's very few other side-by-sides that do that. Is there lots of tilt decks? Absolutely. Hydraulic tilt decks become a little less. A steel bed-lined tilt deck becomes even less, and to actually convert it into a flat deck for those larger items or cumbersome items, it's really hard to beat that. They do have full cab options, so if you want to use this for hunting season as well as the work that you're doing, you can put heat in here and cab it up and be fully enclosed and out of the weather. For whatever reason, I still don't understand why they don't have AC. That's something I'll have to look into, but ultimately you can be out of the weather, and that's kind of the point. So full cab options, that's nice. That's pretty normal in the utility world, so I'm not going to say that that's a Kubota only thing. So we touched on this a second ago, but implements. If you want to put some hydraulic remotes on this thing and supply just about whatever you want, this machine's capable of it and actually designed for it. So pretty hard to beat that. Like I said, you don't have to just do a traditional blade where you have to get out and manually move it like other side-by-side companies. You can actually hook up hydraulics and have a full V-blade if you want. It's actually something that Kubota offers. So now it's time for cons, because there are some. When it comes to cons, there is a list. We are going to start with seating. I talked about it kind of being a pro before, where you can get in this machine and out of this machine really easily because of the upright positioning and stuff like that. The con is you don't exactly have a very supportive seat. That's up to you whether or not that matters, but it is a con in my books. The next con is how awfully slow this thing is. I'm sure if you bought this, the aftermarket could help you out a little bit, or a little bit of tinkering, we can up that, but it is 40 kilometers an hour. If you get the wind at your back and you're going downhill, I've had it at 42, don't tell Kubota. But it is awfully slow, and that's in high gear. If you decide to put a set of tracks on this thing and gear it down, you're going to go even slower. I think I had the 1100C on tracks, and it was like 20-something kilometers an hour. Could it go anywhere? Yep, totally. But it was awfully slow. The next one, and I don't know why exactly they did this, but they went to the lap belt. And this feels oddly out of place with how cheap it is. I don't understand why they did this. I'm gonna guess they just assumed nobody's gonna use it anyway, but that is an awful belt. They used to have a full belt in these things, but they also had half doors and they went a little faster from what I heard, but I don't know why they did that. Not a great belt. Another con is the clearance, and this is kind of a double con, because not only does it have bad clearance, there's not a lot of ways to improve the clearance. I don't know what kind of aftermarket support there is out there. I know there is quite a bit when it comes to racks and gun boots and that kind of thing, but I don't think there's going to be very many companies making huge lifts for this. I know there are some that make like puck lifts and stuff like that, so you can get maybe 2-3 more inches of lift, but ultimately that actually ends up being like an inch or an inch and a half of clearance. You're not going to get big tires or anything under this to buy yourself some clearance. So I was kind of hoping that they would have a little more clearance than what it does. But I've had it back in the bush, and as long as you drive appropriately and task appropriately, you can get the job done still. But as far as I'm concerned, it is a con. There are companies like Orange Aftermarket who have kind of specialized in creating some of this support, you know, for off brands like Kubota. But you're not going to see any like performance modifications, or you're not going to see any lift kits or anything like that, or at least not a lot of them are a lot of great options. So that is something that you're going to have to deal with. So you're going to have really great dealer support, but you're going to have really bad aftermarket support. So a lot of it's going to come down to the user and how creative you are or mechanically inclined to get some of this stuff done. The last con to me is the price, but I'm careful on this one. So as of right now, in Canadian dollars, and I say that as a stipulation, like if you're watching this video 50 years from now, this price is going to change. As of right now, as it sits right here, the way you see it is $26,200 Canadian. Now, plus or minus, I don't know if the winch was included in that or whatever. That's not the craziest price as it sits. But where it does get bad is once you start tacking on labor and cab doors and whatever other features you want and implements, this thing can get crazy expensive, crazy fast. On the flip side, Kubota does offer in-house financing at 0%. That's pretty great too. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm calling it a con. Some of it's kind of pro. I'm gonna leave that one to you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So we have had this machine on the property for the better part of 2 months now. It has done everything around here. It kind of became a staple, from go-karting us around to the neighbors, to checking on the back of our property, to building trails, moving logs, moving wood chips, you name it. This thing has been doing everything around here. We put a lot of hours on it. We got acquainted with it, and I want to say a big thank you to Huckabones Equipment for that opportunity. They gave me the unit for as long as that I needed it to get a proper review in. And if you're looking for more nitty-gritty information, you really want to dive into the specs or maybe purchase one, I highly suggest you go check them out. They're out of Cobden, Ontario. They also have a YouTube channel. You can go and have a look at that. They have a whole different view and opinion on this machine from their point. So that's something to consider. Ultimately, I think this is the best utility side-by-side there is when it comes to a pure work aspect. The moment you introduce recreational use, that's where it all changes, and of course there are better machines for that. At the end of the day, if you are looking for work, this is the machine for you. I have given you my personal opinion. I want to hear what you think down below in the comments section. Let's have a discussion. I can answer whatever questions I can. If I can't answer those questions, I will refer you to Huckabones Equipment. They are the experts in these machines. So a big thank you for watching. I hope this review was useful for you. I had a really great time reviewing it, and honestly, I hope you see more of it on the channel. But sadly, I think it does have to go home at the end of this week. But again, if you want to go see more of it, go check out Huckabones Equipment. They have a YouTube channel I will link down below. We'll see you guys next time.